Good morning. It is 11:15 a.m. on Sunday, December 9th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I'm back at home and it is Sunday. That means I'm continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with episode 6 of season 1, Dipper versus Manliness. So, this is a silly episode. No real dips into the main overall plot arc in this one. Pretty self-contained, but it has echoes of the Dipper trying to impress Wendy plot, even as Wendy is only briefly glimpsed in this one. So it's not stated as the reason that Dipper feels like he wants to be more manly, but it's there's shades of that. But otherwise, it's pretty self-contained. It does introduce the idea of Stan having complicated feelings for Lazy Susan, the waitress at the diner. But so basically, the episode opens with some day-to-day business at the Mystery Shack, and we see the local whose character name is actually Tyler, though I don't think we've heard it on the show up at this point. But he, the get him guy, whose primary characteristic is apparently doing that and being indecisive otherwise. Not too. I do enjoy the ruthlessness of Stan's business practices. Here, you want something for the holidays? How about these crystals? And the guy goes, "Is that just broken glass?" Which it obviously is. And he says, "What are you, a cop?" Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. But in the meantime, we see once they go to the diner being depicted as a pretty rundown place with a beaver problem, apparently. And Stan is super cheap as well. Orders salad dressing for Mabel, ketchup for Dipper, and a quarter of the number 7 on his own, and saying, pancakes with that fancy flour they make these days. But money literally falling out of his sleeve. So it is the desire to win pancakes. My computer is doing something weird. I hope that doesn't disrupt the recording. It is that desire to win pancakes that inspires Dipper to take the manliness test, one of those little grip strength games, and it deems him a wimp. And not only that, but it prints out a little picture of a baby saying he's a cutie patootie, which I enjoyed. And there's various discussion of the things that do or do not make Dipper manly. And in particular, the things cited are his lack of chest hair, depicted by a painfully glowing pasty white chest, and also the incident in which he was singing Disco Girl in the mirror. And this is a fairly standard sort of plot line for, like a kid's cartoon, in the sense of Dipper is not especially tough, but he feels like he ought to be. But it is specifically gendered in a way that sometimes wouldn't be, which is a little bit interesting. But the essential idea is that Dipper is embarrassed because, of course, the big lumberjack guy wins the same arcade tester game by he doesn't even grip the thing, he just nudges it with his finger and it explodes. Yeah. And so we see Dipper go off into the forest, try bench pressing a stick, and eating real man beef jerky, which has a guy on the cover saying, "You're inadequate." And so this is, of course, where he meets the Manitor, specifically the one wearing a yarmulke whose name is Chutzpah, and all of the others are like testosterone and pituitary and all of that sort of thing. And it's in the Minotaur is depicted right off the bat as like probably smelling bad, maybe being a little bit dumb, desperately hungry for beef jerky. And I think, it's a pretty predictable, well, I don't know. I mean, I think I was going to say it's a predictable trend, but I feel like this idea that Dipper goes through all of these tests to become more manly, I think in a lesser cartoon, maybe that would have helped him learn a little bit more how to be manly, and then he would have come back, having learned some lesson about what it means. But in this case, the fact that, like the gnomes, the Manitors are not especially redeemed. They sit around their man cave doing, fighting over dumb stuff and arguing over things and hurting themselves with their own challenges. And so we see Dipper going through these challenges, and I like that they're all pretty silly things, like, put your hand in the pain hole, which is a fun play on the whole like the Gom Jabbar thing with Dune, which I always thought was a little bit of a weird test. I mean, I get it. I don't want to get into the whole thing with Dune, but because I like Dune, but the whole thing of like what determines if you are a human being or not is whether you're able to withstand pain. Anyway, so he performs all of these tests, and he's getting into it. He's doing well with the challenges, and then he goes up to the final challenge, is he has to kill and conquer the multi-bear, which is a fun idea. But in the meantime, so he goes up and discovers the multi-bear also likes the same pop song that he likes, Disco Girl, and knows all the words. And suddenly Dipper is like, well, and it's interesting too that Dipper does actually hesitate even initially when they tell him conquer the multi-bear. He's like, well, really? But they challenge his manliness. And he's already seen that works. He called them chicken for not wanting to train him earlier, discovering that he was able to manipulate them pretty easily, because when your whole self-worth is based on some arbitrary measure of how manly you are, you can be manipulated that way, right? And so he does it to them to get them to train him. They do it to him to get him to go up and undertake this challenge. But when he gets there, he is able to say, wait, no, I like Multi-Bear. Multi-Bear is cool. I don't want to kill Multi-Bear. And then comes back. Well, and for one, it's also just interesting that he is so pumped up on these challenges that he does actually defeat Multi-Bear to the point where he could have killed him pretty easily, which is sort of remarkable. But I think we can imagine that he's sort of just, there's a little bit of a magical, pumped up manliness that is nonetheless superficial there. Anyway, he decides, you know what, Manitors, I'm not gonna do what you say, and I don't care if you think that means I'll never be a man. I don't want to kill Multi-Bear, and you guys are a bunch of jerks if you want me to do that. And so the Manitors, like the gnomes, not redeemed. It's not like he teaches them a lesson that they should be, should not be so violent or angry or whatever. He just learns his own lesson. And in fact, he has to have it pointed out to him. He doesn't even get to have the realization on his own, though. He goes back and tells Stan and Mabel what happened, and Stan is like, looks like you stood up for yourself and did what you knew was right, even though it made them all mad at you. Pretty manly. And sure enough, he grows a chest hair, which is fair given that we see that the genetics of this particular family from Stan suggest that he's going to be pretty hairy as he gets older. And so we also had the B-plot of Mabel trying to get Stan ready to impress Lazy Susan. And I won't get too much into all of that except to just say the gag of having the whole montage and then doing the before and after and having him actually worse at the end is pretty good. I like that a lot. And then, of course, we also have the nice payoff of that whole thing that he does actually impress her and she is interested, and then he almost immediately regrets it because he's kind of an antisocial guy. So in any event, it's a pretty self-contained episode, but it has some nice stuff in it about, sort of learning the lesson that being manly is not the most important thing. And not that it's inherently bad, but that it's not, you should not let your desire to be manly by some arbitrary standard convince you to do things that you don't think you should do. Yeah, that's a good lesson. I think that'll pretty much do it with this episode. And so next time we will be talking about the episode Double Dipper, which is one that I fondly recall. So we'll talk about that next week. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.